Firstly, thank you, Rabbi Yisrael Rubin and Rachel and Reb Mendel and Rezi Rubin and all the shluchim and shluchot, all of the Rebbe's shluchim and shluchot. For 30 years now, you've been honoring my father with this wonderful award, and it's meant the world to my mom and to my sister Linda and my brother Alan. And we appreciate it more than you know. To capture a man like Moshe Losice in 5 minutes is a very difficult thing to do. But more so, it's an enormous honor. First and foremost, Rabbi Rubin mentioned it, Moshe was a teacher. He was a malamed. I thought to myself, when he passed away, he should have been in education. He should have been a teacher. And I realized he was. He was in education, and he was a teacher, and he was a rabbi, and he had a pulpit. He had this beautiful shtibel. And every Shabbos he would speak there after Torah reading for 60 years. And I think if you could put all those Divrei Torah into a volume, you'd have thousands of pages of Divrei Torah, things he learned from the Gedolim that he studied with. So the best way to honor him in these very few moments I have is to give a quick Dvar Torah. And we just read last Shabbos, "Im b'chukotai telechu." If you follow the ways and the halachot, then all these wonderful blessings you'll have. Am Yisrael will be blessed. But if you don't, we'll be punished. And later on in that same parsha, it talks about the tochacha and the terrible punishments that will happen if we don't keep the Torah. It's a very scary thing, and we all know what's happened. In a few days, we're going to celebrate D-Day, and we've been through so much as a people. Why would we start this with if? Why is Hashem saying if? It seems not so positive. It's a question. If? We start a parsha with if, im. So I was thinking about the word im. But im isn't just if. Im is also a bracha. Im is the bracha that we're going to celebrate in just a few days. Im is when all of Klal Yisrael comes together. B'leiv echad, am echad, b'leiv echad. We came together, those are the words of the Torah. We came together, a nation, one heart. The Torah doesn't mince words. Think about that. We're a nation of one heart. When we get like that, wonderful things happen. And that's the gift that Hashem gives us. But He also sends us leaders. Im. So the story of Matan Torah, we had Aharon and Moshe. We had Im. And then again, we have the story of Purim. Again, Klal Yisrael came together in the story of Purim, and we had Im. We had Esther, and we had Moshe. And Mordechai, excuse me. Esther and Mordechai. It's the Im moments that Hashem gives us to help us through this big challenge of Im b'chukotai. I wanted to show you an Im moment, a very recent Im moment. Mendel, if you could help me. This is a moment. You got it?
Give me 1 second.
It's worth the wait. So.
1 second. Give me a second, guys.
All right.
See my inbox for a second.
Something that's not my speech, but something I learned from Moshe. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Moshe taught anyone who davened in the shtibel. Moshe taught us that when you daven, you actually talk to Hashem. When he davened on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, he wasn't singing a song. He had this way of conversing, a dialogue with Hashem. He would say the Shir Hamalot on the holy day. Oh, and this is something I wanted to say. This is an amazing picture. This is June 5th or to June 10th, 1967. And you see here, this is an Im moment here in Albany. This is when the Jewish community was Lev Echad, Ish Echad K'Lev Echad. You have Moshe Losice here, his beautiful wife Rivka, Olav Shalom, Aleh Shalom, my fabulous mom, Hope, to 120. And there's my dad there, Morton Berger. That's Steinkicker, just to the side. This is an Im moment. This is the Im moment that we're still in today. This is when Klal Yisrael came together. And when Klal Yisrael came together like this, at the same time, 1960, this is when the Rebbe decided he's going to fulfill the Baal Shem Tov's dream of the Shafachta Ma'anecha Achutza. This is when the Shuluchim came to the Kotel and put on tefillin on the soldiers. And this is when the Rebbe started sending people like Rabbi Reuben all around the world. Now, The bridge I want to talk about here, your theme this evening, is here you have a couple of young Orthodox Jews here in Albany. There's not a lot of them in the whole community. You have a Musmach of Tervadas, a student of Rav Gedalia Shor, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, studied with the Gedolei Yisrael. You have my father. You have my father, who was a product of YU, a student of Rav Soloveitchik. You have these Orthodox Jews building a foundation. So together with the whole community, with the Hebrew Academy and the Temple Israel and all the whole community coming together, so that Rabbi Reuben can come here and he can do his work, and Mendel and all his sons can bring the community together. And this is the moment that I believe we're still in. Now, I just want to end. The Gemara always tells stories of students saying goodbye to their Rebbe. It's in Gemara Brachos. There's many stories, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir, where the students gather around when the Rebbe is on his deathbed, and they say, Rabbeinu Barchenu, give me a bracha, tell me the secret, tell me how to live a good life. And they're wonderful Gemaras to study, Agadata. But I didn't have that opportunity with my father. He died very suddenly, and I was young. And Moshe was always a second father to me. And then he got very sick. He had a stroke, and again, I wasn't going to be able to say goodbye or have that conversation. But then there was a nace, and he bounced back, and his son Avi took such good care of him, and he came back. And he was Moshe again after being on death's door. So I made it my business to go to his bed and to speak to him and meet with him a couple of times. So I want to share with you what I think are the three most important things he told me on those visits when we were learning together. And I'll share that with you, his community and his friends. And one of them, two of the things he said to me directly, and one his son-in-law mentioned at his funeral at JFK, which was hard to attend. And I'm going to share these three points with you. The first thing he said was, Howie, he said, I have no tainas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I have nothing to ask Hashem. He's been so good to me. He was very modest. He's been better to me than I deserve. He's been so very good to me. And he said that several times. And then the other thing he said was, I loved my Rivka. He said, I never fought with my wife. He was a man who said things straight. And I started thinking back. I grew up in their house. I never saw them fight. He said he never fought, he never argued with his wife. And I think we all know what an important lesson that is. The third thing, he told his son-in-law, he said, one of the last things he said to his son-in-law, Reb Simcha Herbstman, he said, if you take care of other people, Hashem will take care of you. That's how he lived. He didn't just talk the talk, he walked that walk. And my family, my mom, myself, my brother, he was his godfather at his bris, and my sister, he was a special moment for my family. And I think of the moment, Moshe and Rivka were one. You add an Aleph to Moshe, you have Avi, and you have Adina, and a beautiful family and a legacy. These people, they did their share in our ongoing story and bringing the final moment, which is Eliyahu Navi and Mashiach Tzidkenu B'mheira B'yameinu.
Dear friends, it's always good to come home. While I may have lived my adult life away from Albany, I will always consider Albany my home. But Albany was more than just a home to me. It was a safe haven for my father and my grandparents, Zaidi Noach and Babi Yaspa, when they landed in New York straight from Poland. As Ariella and I began to build our lives and our family together, we returned to Albany as often as we could, sometimes not often enough. Nevertheless, Albany was central to our lives, so much so that our children called my parents Bobby and Zadie Albany. A warm and loving tribute to my childhood home and the central role my parents played in this welcoming town. Over the course of the last 16 months, many of you have shared so many memories with me, and I treasure every one. Rabbi Reuben, Ronnie, Howie, and all of the Losice family's long-standing friends in this room. Thank you for sharing such warm and meaningful memories of my father. I am very touched. Some of the younger generation in this room might not know Dad's full life story. And while I won't recount all 86 years of it, suffice it to say that Albany was always his beloved home. At the age of 12, my father was sent away from Albany for a yeshiva education at Tarvadas in Brooklyn. He learned at the yeshiva for 11 years, coming back each summer working with Zadie Nayef at the Modern Furniture. Dad returned to Albany with a rabbinic education, Torah true values, and source material for a lifetime of Divrei Torah. In 1959, he brought to Albany my beloved mother, Rivka Losice. And Ezer Kenegdo, who strengthened him with her wisdom, sharp instinct, charm, dignity, and grace. Together, they set out to build a Bayit Ne'eman b'Yisrael and a community. Both, my father and my mother, answered the call to community service. As a young man, my father coalesced around Rabbi Nuchem Cornmill in creating Shomrei Torah. Dad led the shul's move to its current location on New Scotland Avenue from decaying downtown Elm Street. For the young people in this room, be grateful for how much closer shuls are to you. I recall very cold Albany Shabbat winters, walking 5 miles back and forth with a ski mask to downtown Albany, and was thrilled to have the shul move closer. The move positioned the shul for a period of its sharpest growth in the 1970s and 80s. I have fond and vivid memories of Shomrei Torah growing up. Joyous Simchat Torah, when Morty Berger and my father led animated singing while standing on chairs. Learning opportunities grew with the addition of Rabbi Reuben, who joined the Talmud Chacham Reb Zalman Levine. And I will never forget the Yamim Noraim Tefillot of my youth, led by worthy Chazanim, my father's heartfelt shacharit, shofar blowing by Reb Zalman, Torah reading by Avram Harwitz, our Gabbai, Bernie Teitelman, and Berkat Kohanim with Nathan Rosenstein. However, it was not always quiet on the New Scotland Avenue front, and sometimes tensions arose in Shomrei Torah. But Dad did his best Aharon HaKohen imitation to calm and settle. Ohev Shalom v'Rodev Shalom, because the shul and its relationship to the Albany community were so important to him. With the establishment of Maimonides, Albany's children had something that I did not have, an Orthodox day school to serve the community. Even though my sister Adina and I had long since moved away and were no longer in need of an Albany education, my father was an active participant in Maimonides. Dad offered wise counsel and tangible support, taking great pride in the accomplishments of this school's Talmidim. In his view, a Maimonides education fully prepared them for any high school or Beit Midrash, and he was overjoyed by the students' success. My father was not alone in building the Albany community. My mother was his partner all the way in everything he did. Mom gave of herself willingly in the upkeep of the shul. And for more than 30 years, my mother was dedicated to maintaining the city's only mikveh, Benos Israel. For decades, it was located downtown until it too could be relocated. And my mother's committed leadership to the mikveh was outstanding, both personally and organizationally. In recent years, after my mother passed away, I often tried to get my father to slow down, to visit us in Israel more often. But my father never really stopped working at the Modern Carpet, because it was more than just a business to him. It was a social platform to share life's lessons for all. Dad felt that he could impact the community more as an active businessman than a retired one, and Dad was quite right. For many people, Moshe Losice was the only leader they ever knew at Congregation Shomrei Torah. For most of you, Moshe Losice was always a part of the leadership of Maimonides. For everyone who ever encountered Moshe Losice in his professional setting, you know he set the highest of moral standards, solid principles of ethical business leadership at Modern Furniture and Modern Carpet. I was recently asked what path Dad might have taken if he wasn't in business. Perhaps he would have been a teacher, I answered. But I was reminded, of course, he already was a teacher. He, together with my mother, were teachers in the Albany community their whole lives. They taught all of us by example. In the Navi Micha, it says, "V'hatznea leket im Elohav," to walk humbly with Hashem. This fits my parents' focus on accomplishments, not on monuments or recognition. Instead, what they would have wanted is for us to learn from their example. When you see a community need, answer the call. When you see a vacuum, fill it. Pay my parents' good deeds forward. I certainly hope that I and my children will do the same. Prime Minister Menachem Begin once said, "Fortunate is the man who carries the yoke of his childhood." I am privileged to carry that yoke, and I ask you, in my mother's and father's name, to continue and create generations of responsible Jewish leadership in Albany. They would be proud, and their memory will live on. Thank
everybody. Thank you, Howard. And dinner is served.